Well, here we have it, Mets fans. The latest reporting on Kyle Tucker. Pat Ragazzo from SI Sports Illustrated will be joining us to give us the latest in regard to the New York Mets. And it's not just Kyle Tucker. Cody Bellinger meeting with the Yankees. Are the Mets involved? Who is that mystery team? And what's going to happen with this starting staff? We're going to break it down for you next on Metcast. Yo, what's going on, Mets fans? As always, I am Ray, joined with my co-host Dan Bartels. Welcome back to another off-season edition of Metcast. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button as always. Thanks so much for being here on this Monday night. You have football, but we need to be talking Mets. Too much is going on for us not to be. Dan, we got the Kyle Tucker news, some rumors in regard to the free agent pitching. The Mets checking in on probably an elite ace, you want to say whatever, and Mackenzie Gore with Washington. We'll get to that later. Pat Ragazzo will be joining us very shortly. Just got off the phone with him. He's running a little bit behind schedule, but we'll be sure to have you guys here. If you want to be sure to get involved in the conversation, make sure you become a member on YouTube. We will be going to a lot of your guys' comments and questions throughout the segment with Pat. And also, we will be going through a couple of your guys' voicemails left on the show. Excited to get to that. If you want to get involved in that type of the conversation, 631-403-4771. We'll be getting to a lot of your guys' stuff with that. Check out in the description. That's where the phone number is in case I just botched it. It's a new phone number, but it's something that we're bringing different to the show. And yes, we do a ton of post games throughout the year. If you're new here, we'll be going to a lot of your guys' live calls after the games are over. So when you guys are ranting and raving or watching us ranting and rave, you can come join us with that. I'm sure a lot of you guys agree with me. As we were going throughout the season, yelling, kicking, and screaming, I said, I want to get more people involved, and the best way to do that, why not have a live show, get real calls in here? So it's something we're going to be going to. But Dan, what are your thoughts on this Monday as we're watching all these reports come in, and looks like something could happen very, very soon with the Mets?
Does appear that way, Ray. It does appear that way. I'm excited to hear from Pat Ragazzo tonight of Sports Illustrated what he has to say in regards to a lot of this stuff, because a lot of us tend to just speak and say things and honestly have no real insight, and we appreciate that Pat brings his insight and shares it with us on Metcast tonight. So we're definitely appreciative of it. We're going to get into all the topics, right? Bellinger, Tucker. We had the even Starling Marte we're going to talk about, because Pat was one of the people who actually broke the Starling Marte news that the Mets and them have mutual interests. So we got a really action-packed show. Excited for the voicemails later as well. And thank you, everybody, for being here.
Yeah, so let's start off with our thoughts while we're waiting for him to come in here. We get the reporting over from Jim Duquette. Obviously, Pat confirmed it, had his article that I broke down earlier today. But we look at this, Dan. What are your thoughts in regard to Kyle Tucker? Because now we're hearing there's just 3 teams involved. There's really nobody else. It's us, it's the Dodgers, and it's Toronto. Now, a lot of people keep saying, well, he looks like he'd be a pretty good fit with the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm not totally sold. People don't want to go play in Toronto. The taxes out there, but, there's also high taxes in California. But I look at it like this. Everybody since last year has given David Stearns zero credit and regard for Juan Soto. They want to give him all the bad stuff. No credit for Pete Alonso on the 1-year deal. Now you were hoping it's a longer-term deal. But when you look at things, if David Stearns is able to nail this down, that all goes away, in my opinion. You have to give credit where credit's due. Now, if he doesn't get it done, there are some major questions in regard to this roster. You cannot sell this team or this fan base on a youth movement right now. It just simply cannot happen. You can't bring in Juan Soto and a year later be breaking it down or going through a bridge year. You can't sell this fan base on that. So when you're looking at the alleged offers out there, I just watched a segment over on SNY that we could get to in a minute. They're talking about the potential contracts that he could be getting, short-term, mid-term, long-term. I don't think he's taking a midterm. I think that's a little ridiculous to even put that out there. It's either a very short-term deal like Bregman with an opt-out or a long-term deal. And I'll be honest, I want the long-term deal, Dan. A lot of people keep saying, well, just get the short-term deal. I don't want what happened with Alex Bregman and the Red Sox to happen to us. And look, I know the Mets are high on Carson Bench. I know they like AJ Ewing. I do too. But what are the odds of them both working out? Slim to none. And look, I'd rather have them pushing one of these guys to a DH, to first base, than looking again next offseason to replace another outfielder. You got to get protection for Soto. You got to lengthen the lineup. In my opinion, he's the guy to go get. Give him the long-term deal.
Yeah, Kyle Tucker is the guy to go get. And that's really the discrepancy right now. You have 3 teams in on this player, and odds are I would put a very good bet on one of these 3 teams getting Kyle Tucker. And of course, the names that we've talked about, the Blue Jays, which are on the higher end of the deal, they're willing to go 6 years. They're willing to go up to 8 years potentially for a Kyle Tucker. So there is no bounds that the Blue Jays are not willing to go. Short-term, long-term, definitely put them as the front runner right now. But you have the Mets who are on that short-term window, 3 years. I propose 120, 2 opt-outs, a very similar Bregman-type contract. That would be hopefully what lures him to the Mets. But then you're asking the question, if the Dodgers can put up that same contract, which they very well can, why would you choose to go to the Mets over the Dodgers? We'll see. I mean, the ball's in Kyle Tucker's court right now. So he determines where it bounces, and hopefully it's to Queens. I'm not going to sit here and say that the Mets are on the outside looking in. They met with him on Zoom, and that is very important. People say a Zoom meeting doesn't mean anything. A Zoom meeting is a form of showing interest, right? In a pretty serious form of it, might I add. So I'm excited for the Mets' chances. I'm still not putting them as the favorite because of that long-term vision that the Blue Jays can definitely tap into that the Mets can't. But I like the Mets' chances. I would put it at 60-30-10 with the Dodgers.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you envision right now Toronto giving out another long-term contract? They gave out the Santander contract, the Vlad contract, the Cease contract. They're going to give out another, they gave what? How many years did Cease get? 7?
210.
So he got 7. Vlad gets what? What did he get? 12?
10 or 12 for 5
something like that. They're going to go out and give Kyle Tucker another 10 years. I don't see that happening. I think it becomes between the Mets and the Dodgers. I really do. And here's the thing. The Dodgers need to move Hernandez. And I question this too. I feel like when the Dodgers want someone, they're very aggressive. They go and get them. The fact this is dragging out, Dan, it is the middle of January. Spring training starts in a month. And shout out to you guys. I'll be there covering the Mets this spring training. Just got over with my wife. I swore I was not going to go this year. I was going to rebel against this team, but I got that itch in my ear. I can't get off my ear. I said, honey, we're going. Book the flight, so I'll be there in March covering the team for you guys. But when I look at this team, Dan, I'm really struggling right now because you look at the 2 available options in Bellinger and Tucker. And now we hear that the Yankees are meeting with Bellinger again, despite reporting just recently talking about how the Yankees were out on Bellinger. They're going to pivot to Bo Bichette. I got a feeling Bichette's contract is going to be crazy absurd, not only just because of his age. Now Boston's allegedly involved. You saw their reporting. Shout out to them. How about that? Boston fans trolling Yankee fans last year, losing Juan Soto. How does it feel? $10 million. You lost Bregman. And, don't tell me your owner's here to you're back spending. You're going to do your thing. Look at the players that have walked out of Boston in the last decade. Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts. You have Rafael Devers. Now Alex Bregman. You can't sell your fan base. You're trying to win and then have that happen. The only good thing for the Mets is both these guys are outfielders, and Boston's simply not looking to acquire that. How about that? That trade market has also calmed down as well. Their center fielder allegedly being traded. But my question to you is, if Bellinger goes to the Yankees and Tucker goes to Toronto, where do the Mets pivot? And I know what you're going to say, Dan, and it'll anger the hell out of Mets fans. You want to put 3 million fannies back in the seats? It simply has to happen the right way. You got to acquire big stars, big talent. Kyle Tucker will put fans in the stands. And I want to get your thoughts on that. And I want to bring up a point that a lot of people have been making to me about him not being a good player. So I'm going to pull up his stats while you're responding.
Yeah, I mean, with the Tucker stuff, if they miss out on both of those outfielders, you know what I'm going to say. Again, it's the guy from the White Sox, Luis Robert, $20 million club option for the next 2 seasons. So if you don't like him, you just cut him. That is very simple. It's obviously something we don't want to see happen. We want to see him return to his 2023 form when he was hitting 40-plus home runs. Like, that's the Luis Robert we trade for. But it's a risky market. Do you still want to target a Harrison Bader? He's still out there. Do you want to target potentially, again, trade target in Jake Myers, trade target in Brendan Donovan? These are all still names that could potentially be out there. But it's drying up, and it's drying up very fast. So for me, I think they're going to reach that point. And I'm going to ask Pat this, hopefully if we get the time. When is the point in the offseason where the Mets just throw up their hands and they say, we're going with the kids. We trust our rotation. We trust our outfielders. We trust our youth. We're not going to go add big-time free agents, which would be pretty upsetting, and I hope they don't do that. But it's definitely something to consider. I see a lot of Mets fans saying, don't be surprised when David Stearns does nothing this offseason. Well, that's the world we should get prepared to live in, but I'm not prepared to live in it just yet. I'm still looking at Kyle Tucker. I'm still looking at Cody Bellinger for sure.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you bring up your Brandon Donovan point?
Well, he's just a great trade target, probably the hottest trade target right now.
Why does everyone think that he's so available?
Again, there's a lot of teams calling for him. He fits a position of need. You see another utility guy now in Matt Shaw who hits the market because of an Alex Bregman being traded in. So there's a lot of teams calling about Donovan. I'm sure a couple teams are now interested in Matt Shaw, but Donovan more so, and he's definitely the better player. So, yeah, that's something to think about. I don't know if the Mets trade for Donovan. I feel like that is just too pricey, but it's something to definitely think of.
And with that said, guys, we're going to be getting to your voicemails and calls right after Pat chimes in. But Pat Ragazzo, SI, appreciate you coming in, Pat, as always. Look, it's heating up, bro. You're starting to finally feel the stove. It's getting hot, a little wood's on the fire. A lot of Met fans are stoked, but we're also very scared. So I want to welcome you into the show, and we'll immediately get into it with the Kyle Tucker news.
Well, thanks so much for having me, guys. Always good coming on to chop it up with both of you. Yeah, it was a really slow holiday season, painfully slow, and it's been very slow since the winter meetings in early December. But yeah, no, things are starting to sizzle a little bit on the stove, and yeah, we got a little bit of movement here between the Mets and Kyle Tucker, it seems.
So let me ask you this. So we hear about the 3 teams that are involved. Obviously, the Dodgers, Toronto. For you, and we got to be honest here, which team makes the most sense for you when it comes to Kyle Tucker?
I think the Toronto Blue Jays. I think if the Blue Jays are willing to give him a long-term deal, I think he fits them very well in right field. It would move Santander, who they just invested long-term money in last year, and Addison Barger into splitting left field duties, and it would have Tucker and right. On the other hand, though, Tucker's been injured the last 2 seasons, and he had an abysmal second half with the Chicago Cubs playing through a broken hand. And he maybe could sign a short-term deal with an opt-out and go out and be healthy for a season and put up monster numbers, because he still put up an 841 OPS last year playing with a broken hand. Like, that's pretty impressive. He obviously, his first half was much better than his second half with the Cubs, but yeah, kind of rebuilding that value. And then he's still just 28 years old. So, he could go out there and, obviously light it up in 2026 and then re-hit the market next year. But right now, when looking at in terms of fits, I think the Blue Jays probably fit him the best.
Now let me ask you this. If the Mets were to acquire him, would it only be on a short-term deal, or are the Mets open to a potential long-term contract?
I think that's the $1 million question. I actually don't know. It hasn't been reported either. It's not really out there. I mean, it's kind of been mentioned that, maybe the Mets and Dodgers probably fit him more as a short-term option with opt-outs. But I can't definitively say if the Mets are only interested in a short-term deal with him. I'm not really sure. All I know is that, I was described cautiously optimistic in their chances in the race between the Dodgers and the Blue Jays.
Now, one thing that was really interesting, before we came on tonight, Jim Duquette did another session, whatever you want to call it, show on SNY, and he was talking about how Steve Cohen gets involved in a lot of these negotiations. Could that kind of sway things where Steve says, you know what, we want Tucker, because if he walks, the other options are not nearly as good, and we'll get into that in a minute. But could he say, listen, I'm willing to go, you want to go 6 years, I'll go 7 years, I'll eat the final year, or we'll just put a big signing bonus up front, kind of what they did with, what they did with Soto. The Mets are the only team, when you look at these big market teams, the Dodgers, hell, other teams are starting to do it now, that don't have a ton of deferrals. They have a couple $1 million here or there with Devin Williams and Sean Manaea, but they have the ability to potentially do this with a guy like Kyle Tucker if he's willing to do, deferrals. So could you see Steve Cohen getting involved, or is this strictly a David Stearns show?
It's possible. It is possible that Steve Cohen could get involved and just say, screw it, and he wants to have his guy, and if he's that in love with Tucker, and and wanting to make that big splash this offseason, because the Mets, and winning the offseason doesn't mean anything. Obviously, the Mets had a really good offseason last year. They had a really good offseason following the 2022 season, and both of those following campaigns resulted in not making the playoffs. So it is possible that Cohen could get involved and make a move, which we've seen him do with Carlos Correa in the past, which obviously didn't work out because of the medicals. You saw him do it with Soto, where everyone and their brother thought that the Yankees were going to retain Soto last year. So it's definitely possible. But on the other hand, the way the offseason has gone, it would be a little bit of a surprise, just because Cohen has kind of let Stearns do his thing in building this team, and trusted David Stearns that, hey, this is your team, and I'm going to let you build it the way that you want to build it, and letting go of, Pete Alonso, letting Edwin Diaz walk, getting rid of Brandon Nimmo, Jeff McNeil, like, these have been David Stearns' running the team, which is what he was brought in to do. So, yeah, I think that it's possible that Cohen could get involved and help push this deal to the, past the goal line. But at the same time, the way the offseason has gone, it has been Stearns who's been running the show.
Pat, talking about those players that many thought would be Yankees once they hit free agency, I want to talk about Cody Bellinger, because right now you're seeing the Yankees now offer a second contract to him. It still feels like, according to Buster Olney, there's an impasse in the talks. You have John Heyman saying that the contract talks are still going on. What is the situation with Bellinger from your perspective, and where do you think he ultimately ends up?
I don't buy that the Yankees are out on Bellinger. I think that Bellinger and the Yankees is still a match made in heaven. I think the fit is too good, and I think the Yankees want him back too badly to let him go. They were in a similar situation with DJ LeMahieu years ago, where everyone said they can't let him go. They can't let him out the door. He was coming off a batting title season. He had a great 2019 season, 2020 shortened campaign with the Yankees, and he was their star player. So they wound up giving him 6 years, which was a big, big mistake. They ultimately released him this past season and are eating a lot of that money. But I do think that Bellinger, his market hasn't necessarily materialized. And if it has, it's kind of been a mystery. But I don't buy that that the Yankees are done with him. We saw the same thing with Pete Alonso last winter, where the Mets were ready to move on, and that they were under the impression that Alonso was going to sign elsewhere. And then, his market continued to dip, and the Mets were able to swoop in and re-sign him on a short-term deal. So I'm not saying Bellinger is going to sign a short-term deal. I don't think that he will, but after the season he just had, but I do think that the Yankees are still the perfect fit for him.
And how about the Mets, right? What is the likelihood of that happening? I know their focus is Tucker, and it should be. He's the better player. But do you think are they that other team that's upping this market and forcing the Yankees to put in that second offer? Do you think the Yankees are bidding against themselves? How aggressive do you think the Mets are focusing on Tucker, but also keeping Bellinger in mind?
I don't get the sense that the Mets have been that aggressive with Bellinger. We just haven't heard too much, involving those two, other than mild interest. And I do think that Bellinger would be a great fit for the Mets. And earlier this offseason, before moves started to really be made, I said, keep an eye on the Mets being heavily in on his market. And they have been in on him, but it hasn't really progressed or gone anywhere. And we really haven't heard anything between the Mets and Cody Bellinger. So I don't really buy that nor get the sense that they're really too hard in on him right now.
This is going to be a theme that comes up a couple times when we ask you about these players. What if they end up not getting any of these players and they miss out on Tucker, they miss out on Bellinger? We've heard Austin Hayes, Jake Myers might be available. Is there any outfield bats that you're thinking of that maybe the average fan isn't thinking of if they miss out on the big stars?
Yeah, you could look at teams like the Cubs, who are looking to maybe trade some guys. I don't know, if Seiya Suzuki is someone who the Cubs would trade now that, they traded their number one outfield prospect in Cassie. Obviously in that trade for Edward Cabrera. So I don't really think that that's too realistic now, but that is a name that would really fit the Mets and a number of teams. And I know, a number of teams like Seiya Suzuki. He's coming off 2 really good years, had a good postseason with the Cubs. That's maybe someone who people haven't really been thinking of. Austin Hayes is still out there. Like you said, Jake Myers is a possibility. Luis Robert Jr. is a name who we've heard, he's been on the trading block for 2 straight years.
Sorry.
Not too
audible sigh.
but yeah, I think Suzuki would be the name that really no one's really talking about that a number of teams like.
Let me ask you about this. Has the Alex Bregman contract negatively affected the market? Because who on earth saw him getting that kind of money over that? For a 32-year-old third baseman, he's a solid player. Is he a $35 million a year player at this point in his career? In my opinion, no. But, did he negatively affect the market? Are we going to see AAVs like we saw Cody Bellinger allegedly wants 37 to 39 million? Everyone was looking at him twice like, you're out of your mind. And then this Bregman contract breaks. You're like, wait a second, maybe this is now becoming realistic.
Yeah, I think that with Bregman, he's probably the best. Him and Kyle Schwarber, I've heard, are the 2 best clubhouse guys in the entire league. Like they're just great leaders. They come in and they impact the room. He has the track record, obviously. I do think that, is he a $35 million a year player at this point in his career? Maybe not, but he does make an impact in more ways than just on the diamond. So, I guess we'll see how it kind of affects the rest of the market. I don't think Bellinger's going to get $39 million a year. I don't think that he's worth that either. I mean, he's a really nice player, but I think more so in the $30 to $35 million range, probably for Bellinger.
Now let me ask you this, because you just kind of touched on the outfield, some of the trade targets. Is there a possibility where the Mets say we're going to do a bridge year? I can't even say this. Words are coming out of my mouth. A bridge year and go young. A lot of people in the comments, and shout out to you guys. I disagree because, in my opinion, Pat, the greater organizations use their farm system to supplement their team and get better in trades. Now, if you're telling me Carson Bench you feel is going to be an all-star, okay, maybe you don't trade him. But is there a world where we could see a ton of in-house players on this team? The Acuñas, the Mauricios, the Vientos, the Benj, the AJ Ewing potentially down the line?
I'm all for giving the kids some runway to play. Like, I'd like to see Jet Williams see what he can do, and I'd like to see what Carson Benj can do. And AJ Ewing is a guy who all the prospect huggers have been hyping up, and he's done very well in the minor leagues as well. He's an exciting player on the horizon. It's just not something you can count on, though. Like, maybe give some runway to a guy like Benj. I think Benj will get a shot this year. I think Jet Williams will get a shot this year as well. But you can't rely on it. It's unfair to rely on those guys at premium positions. And to come in and be a major impact, on this team and try and help this team get to the postseason. It's just not fair to rely on that.
Now, Met Fanatic had an interesting comment here while we're heading out there. I just want to bring it up really quick. Do opt-outs put the Mets over the top with Tucker? If so, would the opt-out structure look like, that pulls King Tuck? What would it look like pulling him to Queens? Is it as similar to Bregman, where it's 3 years, 40 million, 3 years, 120, 20 million up front and an opt-out, or what kind of structure are we looking at?
That's a really good question. If it's a short-term deal, then there's going to be opt-outs. Like I would expect an opt-out after the first year, but I would put multiple opt-outs in the deal. If it's a 3-year deal or so, 3 to 4 years, it's anybody's guess. But yeah, I think that an opt-out after the first year would be crucial if he does indeed sign a short-term deal, whether it's with the Mets or potentially with the Dodgers.
Now, before we get to the starting staff, I want to talk about other infield options. It seems like the Mets are going to be handing our boy Brett Beatty the third base job. There's been no other reports out there suggesting otherwise. But you got to think, Pat, there's got to be some type of contingency plan. There is no Jeff McNeil on this team now, where we all forget Beatty got sent down. I mean, Dan, you were looking up before the show. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's got no options or one option left.
He has any.
Something of that nature. Like, if the Mets are going all in with this, the bottom of this lineup, Pat, right now, you could have Marcus Semien. Oh my gosh, Tyron Taylor, and we're all praying Brett Beatty works out, obviously. But what is the contingency plan? Are you really going to sell this fan base? Ronnie Mauricio, who struck out nearly half of his at bats last year in 2025.
Well, I think Mauricio needs some more time in the minors and improving his plate discipline. And he showed flashes. I would say in one of the good stretches where the Mets kind of got back on track during the season was that series that comes to mind in San Francisco where Ronnie Mauricio went 4 for 4, multiple home runs, and he looked like, hey, maybe this guy doesn't need any more seasoning in the minors. But then he kind of came crashing back down to earth. Considering all the time that he missed with the torn ACL. I think Vientos is maybe an option again. I expect him to get opportunities at first base, but if Beatty falters, then maybe trying Vientos again at third base is a possibility. But like we just talked about with the prospects, like you can't go into the season with this many question marks, and I think that's why they are pursuing a Bellinger while they are pursuing a Tucker, I should say, and also exploring the trade market as well and finding ways to get better in the position player market too.
That's interesting what you said about Vientos playing first, and that's a great segue into Polanco. What is your confidence level with him, a guy who's only played one inning at the position? I know he's working at it in the offseason. He's an athletic guy. I'm sure he can handle the position, but what is your confidence level in that? And then what is the share going to be, do you think, between Polanco, Vientos playing first, and maybe another guy like a Beatty getting a first base hit or something like that?
I think it's kind of a scary list of options, kind of when you put it that way. But
not Pete Alonso, I'll tell you that. But
yeah. But I really think it's going to be whoever's the best defensively at that position is who's going to get the majority of reps there. I kind of like Polanco as a DH. As I'm more confident in him, obviously, as a DH than as a first baseman.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that he could play the position. There was a time where he was an above average middle infielder. And he did start to practice the position last year with the Mariners, although he didn't get any reps in game. But I mean, I guess we'll have to wait and see how he transitions to the position, if the Mets are able to pull this off, and if Polanco is able to pull this off. And Vientos, that's really where Vientos should be a first baseman, and he's got that power to play first base. It's just a matter of, can he make that transition to the position? I'm not so sure. But hey, we're going to find out here pretty soon in the next couple months.
Definitely. Before we touch on the pitching, before we leave the offensive group of guys, I want to talk about one more player that you actually reported on. And I give you credit because I really like this player and I want to see him back on the Mets because he fits with Juan Soto, and that's Starling Marte.
Yep.
Is there any new development with that? Can you just kind of talk about that and what Marte could mean to the Mets in 2026?
I think it's just a wait and see kind of situation with Marte. I mean, the Mets have, interest in bringing him back, and Marte has interest in coming back. But, at the same time, we're going to have to see how this roster shakes out. The Mets have other priorities, and Marte's market kind of still seems to be a little cool. I know around the winter meetings, it was pretty cold at the time, but, that's where he is in his career. He's, a 37-year-old outfielder with knee issues, and he had the double groin surgery, and he profiles more as a DH now at this point. But he's a good clubhouse fit, obviously a leader in that room, and very close with Juan Soto. So I could see them bringing him back, but we're going to have to see how this roster shakes out before that potentially happens down the road.
No doubt. Let's talk about the pitching, Pat. Freddie Peralta seems to be one of the hot button names right now in terms of trading for him, and $8 million club option. There's a lot of things to like with Freddie Peralta. What would be the likeliness that the Mets can actually pull that off? And what would your trade package be for Freddie Peralta?
It's very risky because you're potentially giving up a potential future ace in a Jonah Tong or a Brandon Sproat, or, those are the two names that teams, have been asking about this offseason for 1 year of a guy who, has ace potential and had a really good year last year with the Brewers. I think the Brewers would love to trade him to get, a controllable starter with ace potential that the Mets have to offer. But I think the risk is just probably too high for the Mets to pull something off like that. The only pitcher that I would trade their young pitching for at this point would be Tarek Skubal, but they could just wait. And same with Peralta. They could just wait until next year to sign one of those guys on the free agent market and not have to give up their prospects and a potential future stud in the rotation in either a Tong or a Brandon Sproat.
I will say this. I'm having a heart attack over here listening to Starling Marte. Like, what are we doing, Pat? The guy's played 121 games 0 times since 2019. We're going back to when Dan was in elementary school. Like, come on, what are we doing here? Starling Marte. Like, it's very, very frustrating when you hear names like that because you're supposed to be competing. Forget the Dodgers, the Phillies. We keep talking, Pat, about how this team is light years away from Philly. You have a chance, and we could get right into the pitching now. I know John Harper, have him on all the time. You're a big fan of Ranger Suarez. I'm not so much. I understand he's been lights out in the postseason. Got to give him that. But we're a team that needs to get there. For us to compete with the Phillies, what do you see this team have to do next year? Or is it just not possible in 2026?
The Mets are short on offense. I mean, they let Pete Alonso go, and they got rid of Brandon Nimmo, who had a good year last year offensively as well. Mets are short on offense, but the reason why they didn't make the postseason last year, everyone knows, is the pitching. So this has been on my mind too. Like, if the Mets sign Kyle Tucker, then it's kind of distracting everybody. It's rectifying the offseason and making the fan base happy, but kind of distracting everyone from the fact that could they really run it back with the same pitching staff? I mean, now that they have the 3 young guns in Sproat, Tong, and McLean, but they'd essentially be running it back, counting on Sean Manaea to bounce back after an injury-plagued season, counting on Kodai Senga to bounce back with, coming off this hamstring injury he had that messed up his whole season. You're just counting on a lot. And the whole goal and priority was run prevention and upgrading the pitching and defense. And I don't think the Mets have done that enough this offseason. I mean, there's still a ways to go. I mean, we're about a month out from spring training, but I mean, there is a large gap between, you asked with the Phillies and the Dodgers, of course, too, but there is a large gap between the Mets and those teams right now. And I don't know that they can make enough moves, because even look at the bullpen. The Mets have about half a bullpen right now. And they lost one of the best closers in all of baseball in Diaz and replaced him with Devin Williams and Luke Weaver. I don't know that the Mets can kind of close the gap, unless they were to sign Tucker and to add a big name starter this offseason. Then that would kind of help them bridge the gap a little bit to the Phillies and the Dodgers. But I don't know that they'll be able to in one offseason.
Now, we didn't get your take of what happened with the Edwin Diaz situation. What was your whole take on that whole thing?
I think through my reporting and everything I've heard, I think Diaz wanted to leave. I think he wanted out, and he really wanted to go to the Dodgers. Obviously, I mean, they're coming off back-to-back World Series championships, and the rich only got richer with that addition. And I do think the Mets were caught off guard a little bit. I don't think that they were properly. How should I say it? I don't think that they were. I don't think they really bought that Diaz was that close to signing with another team. I don't think that the Mets really knew that Diaz was as close as he was with the Dodgers, and that the Dodgers were, because I heard all offseason that the Dodgers weren't going to be serious players in Diaz. But the Dodgers have an owner like the Mets too. I mean, Steve Cohen's kind of like this too, but the Dodgers have an owner who kind of says, screw it, let's go get it done with a player. Like their owner can be convinced to make big moves, even when they're not in on someone. That's why you can never say the Dodgers are out on somebody. So, yeah, I think that the Mets were kind of caught off guard. I know that they were shocked that he signed with the Dodgers and didn't come back and give them a chance to match, but through my reporting. But that's just my take on the whole situation. I think the Mets were caught off guard, and I think Diaz definitely wanted out.
Well, I saw that report that you put out there. Great work, by the way.
Thank you.
You saw your report. It's like the Mets are kind of stunned that this happened, but there was no pivot. You're going from Edwin Diaz to Weaver? Really? That's the guy who imploded for the Yankees, where, look, I understand solid relief pitcher. Can't take it away from him. But you're going from a sure thing in Diaz to Now you're bringing in a guy who collapsed down the stretch and Devin Williams, who couldn't close in New York last year. I feel like a lot of Mets fans, including myself, are waiting for that other big arm to come in, not only just the starting rotation, but in the bullpen.
Yeah, and the bullpen arms have come flying off the board. Tyler Kinley, Pierce Johnson, you know, a number of names. I mean, Sir Anthony Dominguez is still out there. I think he would be a good addition for the Mets. But yeah, they do have some work to do in that bullpen still. It does have a lot of holes, and there's a lot of question marks. You know, counting on Devin Williams to bounce back, and counting on Luke Weaver to bounce back as well.
I want to trace back really quick to the outfield situation you guys are having. Is there a world that Harrison Bader is the starting center fielder next year
For the Mets?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that they're interested in him, actually. Is he a fit?
At the deadline, allegedly they were, right? I might have that wrong.
They preferred Cedric Mullins over Harrison Bader, which obviously was a mistake.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah,
I knows how to get it in there, you know.
I haven't heard any link between the Mets and Harrison Bader. Now they could surprise us and they could wind up bringing him back, but just up until this point, I have not gotten the sense that they're too in on bringing back Harrison Bader.
I want to get your opinion on a baseball conversation, Pat. And there's been a lot of them recently with the CBA and potential deadlines on free agents and expansion and realignment. I'll just stick with the realignment, expansion type thing. Deadlines, I know it's like a really complex thing. Salary cap, salary floor. Are you for expansion? Are you for realignment? Are those things that you think would be good for baseball or bad?
I'm a traditionalist. I don't really want a realignment. I mean, I do like how Rob Manfred said that the teams that share a market won't share a division. I think I kind of like that. So, I mean, that's what we have now. So I think that we should keep that going. But yeah, I would like to see an expansion, I think. And I think it's a city like Nashville should have a baseball team. I haven't given it much thought on what other city could get a team, but I think Nashville, it's been long overdue that they should get a baseball team.
I agree completely.
Now, let me ask you this, Pat. We're seeing this offseason, Acuna with the 4 home runs. Do the Mets believe in this guy, or is he going to be part of a bigger trade package? What do you think is going to happen with him?
I don't think his value is that high right now in terms of packaging him. I think last year would have been the time to trade him when his value was a little higher. You know, given the cameo he made down the stretch of 2024, he filled in nicely for Francisco Lindor, and he's got the Acuna name. So I think that last year would have been the time to trade him. I don't think his value is too high after the season he just had, but he is lighting it up in the Winter League right now. So yeah, I mean that could raise his value a little bit, but I think just based off what we've seen him do in his major league career so far, his value is not really there.
One more from me, Pat. I know I'm jumping around, but these are 2 names that I just wanted to ask you about specifically because we haven't really heard anything at all about these guys.
Yeah.
Eugenio Suarez for the Mets for like a DH third base. Do you think that's a possibility offensively? And then for the pitching, Zach Allen. What is going on with Zach Allen's market?
I think both of those players are not players who the Mets are in on right now, but the Mets are opportunistic and they're going to be opportunistic. And if those guys' markets drop, you know, never say never. So, you know, if the Mets still have holes and we're getting closer to spring training, or we get into spring training and those guys are still available, you know, then I would say that it could potentially be a possibility. But right now, I haven't heard either of those teams or players, I should say, being linked to the Mets.
Cool.
All right, Pat. Thank you so much for your time. You've been gracious with it.
Yeah,
a long time actually. Thanks so much for coming in. Where can people find your work?
Yeah, you could find my work at Mets on SI. You read all my articles there and all my staff's articles. And you also catch my work at Ragazzo Report, Ragazzo Report on Twitter and Instagram.
Perfect. Thanks so much, brother. We'll have you on soon. Hopefully, are you going to be at spring training?
I will be, yeah.
All right, I'll catch you down there, brother.
All right.
I'll be there as well. Hopefully, we make some big waves here. Appreciate you coming on
Thank you, Pat.
short notice, and hopefully we make some moves.
Of course, guys. Thanks so much for having me. Take care.
Take care.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, that was Pat Ragazzo. We're going to be sticking around, though. We're going to be taking some of your calls, some of your voicemails that you guys have left us. A lot of your comments have been starring, a lot of them going up and down, trying to read through a lot of your guys' stuff. Dan, Starling Marte. I will lose my you-know-what if I hear Starling Marte. I was looking at it as we're talking about this because, I want to make sure I'm not nuts here. Listen to this. Last year, 98 games, 24, 94 games, and 23, 86 games, 22, 118, 21, 56. Obviously, you had the shortened season, 21, 120, excuse me. And 20, you have the shortened season, 2019, 132. This guy hasn't played more than 132 games since 2018. We're going back 8 years the last time he played a full season. Like, that's where we're at. Like, I understand the Polanco move, bro. It's like, okay, Polanco's a solid player, hits in the playoffs, he plays, he's younger, but a 37-year-old Starling Marte, what do we?
I know. The only reason I proposed that and asked Pat about it is because there's a couple things working for Mr. Starling Marte. A, you're coming off a clubhouse that all reports have said was completely severed. It was not a good clubhouse last year. Marte improves that. Just it's not the end of the world, but it's definitely a positive. When he plays, he's not terrible. Like, we can't ignore when Starling Marte actually goes on the field. He could steal you a base, still surprisingly the career stolen bases, active stolen base leader in Major League Baseball. He can give you a great arm. We saw in left field against the Atlanta Braves, the greatest outfield assist from a New York Met in 2025 came from Starling Marte in Atlanta. So I can't ignore these things, but it's almost impossible to get him on the field consistently. So that's where I meet you there. It's probably not the smartest signing, but to me, to fill out a bench spot, I'm perfectly okay with it. But we'll see. There's better players for sure.
Oh, come on. Come on. All right, guys, I want to get to a video really quick. Right as we were coming on, Duquette spoke about Kyle Tucker, and Dan and I were kind of talking about this a little bit. I want to get to it really quick. Let's give it a listen.
What does your latest report here mean for the Mets and Kyle Tucker?
Well, I think it's good news for a lot of reasons. First off, when you're meeting with a star player like this, you have to be able to talk to them either in person or, face to face to let them know where you see the team going, the direction you're going. Why, and for the Mets, why did you get off track here in 2025? What do you have in mind for the future? Some of those things, you have ownership, which is a huge asset. I know in Toronto, their owner doesn't really isn't a part of any of these type of meetings. It's huge, I think positive from the Mets side of things. So the ownership can sit there and back up what the front office is saying. Yeah, in terms of intent, it shows your intent. Obviously, it creates the expectation level, I think, even within your fan base. So there's so many good and positive things. Especially in a winter that hasn't been positive so far. I think that, from the Mets side of things, this is a real good step in the right direction. Now they got to close the deal out.
Yeah, Duke, you've been the one ray of hope here, feeding the Met fans and Tucker together, getting the Mets involved with Tucker. So you mentioned it, they got to get him. So what will the Mets need to do to land Tucker?
I think right now it's widely felt that the Blue Jays have the longer-term deal, and there's 2 short-term deals, Mets and the Dodgers. Well, you're not winning that if it's close or it's a tie. I mean, you're just not. That's the reality of the situation, and we already saw what happened there with Edwin Diaz there with the Dodgers. So I think if you're the Mets, and they have to be considering this. Do you up your offer? If the rumor's been 3 or 4 years, do you push it forward to 5 years? I mean, he's 29 years old. Had a 840 or so OPS with a broken hand for a full month. He played through that. He's been a plus defender up until last year. Last year, he took a little bit of a step back in the metrics, but he was I think a 30 combined DRS, defensive run saves from 2021 through 2024. So he's a rare 5-tool guy, and you don't have to pay 8 or 9 years. Let's say it's 5 or 6 years, whatever that number is, getting him into his mid-30s. I'm comfortable with it as long as, he's comfortable with coming to New York. And I think you don't know any of that until you have that face-to-face meeting.
What is your
Dan, really interesting comments when we're talking about him right there. I mean, it's like he makes a great case, but I don't think you really see Tucker getting under 8 years. How is Bellinger, allegedly, who's got a 4 to 5 year contract on the table from the Yankees, not getting way more than that, being younger than Bellinger.
Well, that's why it's interesting to talk to Pat, and he heard, or just based off his opinion, that the Mets aren't as aggressive on Cody Bellinger. I thought they were kind of dabbling with both to see if one shook loose and one went to another team, they could swoop in on the other. It really feels like they're all in on Tucker in a lot of respects, and that's good. And what Jim Duquette says, if the Mets have to go up to a 5-year deal, I kind of went like, wow, like I don't see that happening, and that's kind of where we're all at. Do the Mets go out of their comfort zone? That feels like the theme of the offseason, whether it be for a Framber, whether it be for a Kyle Tucker. Clearly, this is not in the Mets' realm of comfort, and I don't see them giving out a 5-year deal. I just don't, as crazy as that sounds. But who knows? Things could change, guys. I want Kyle Tucker, but I think he has to settle for a 3 or 4 year deal because of just the injury risk, and there is a lot of that coming from Kyle Tucker. And then Jim Duquette says he's a 5-tool player. Cody Bellinger is the only true 5-tool player left on the open market, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah, all right. So, guys, with that said, we're going to get to some of your guys' calls that you left us over the last couple of days. Been going through a few of them. We have a couple of them lined up. Again, we've been starting this new segment where you guys can call and leave us some voicemails, and we will be doing some live stuff, which the Discord is finally up. So if you guys are a member over on YouTube and want to get involved in live conversations with Dan and myself, if you log into Discord with your YouTube credentials, it will then show you the Discord. You could join there. We're chatting it up a lot throughout the day, talking Mets and stuff. And with that said, I want to get to a couple of voicemails. Guys, remember, if you want to get involved, call into the show 631-403-7771. I believe I said it wrong before, but that's the number, 631-403-7771. You can't do it right now, but after the show, feel free to chime in. And with that said, we're going to get to our first one. Remember, guys, when you call in, give your name, and then you could say whatever you want to say. Try to keep it under a minute. I say between 25 and 35 seconds if you can. But the first one, here we go.
Hey, gentlemen, it's Clue. Keep up the great work on the podcast. Love it, and love the voicemail aspect here. I just want to say I'm not expecting David Stearns to do anything. I expect him to maybe to sign Walker Buehler and some other bum to play left field, but I don't think we're getting Tucker. I don't think we're getting Bellinger. I don't think we're getting any other Ranger Suarez. I don't think we're getting Valdez. I just think he's completely content with filling the field with bums. All right. Keep up the great work, guys.
You know what, Dan? I think a lot of Mets fans feel like him. Like the confidence level right now in Mets land is like 0.
He's right. I mean, I get it. There's not a lot of confidence right now from Mets fans. And why should you be confident? You see the Dodgers in on a sweepstakes with the Mets. You've seen how that's worked out this past offseason. So I get it. I don't truthfully think they land Kyle Tucker. I would be shocked if they land Kyle Tucker. Obviously, we're trying to do all the reporting we possibly can to make it a real thing. We want to see Kyle Tucker in Queens. But we have to see if these offers come down to where the Mets can meet them, and right now they are not.
Right, and how much longer is this going to drag out? Like,
Another
here's
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Tucker signs. Bellinger's going to the Yankees. There's nowhere to pivot, and we're stuck at the altar. You know, bringing in Harrison Bader back, like that's and supposedly, I know Pat said they preferred Mullins over Bader. I'm not 100% sold on that. I'm not saying he's wrong, but at the time, Bader was a better player. And I know a lot of Met fans, we all love to Monday morning quarterback. I'm one of those guys. We all love to sit here and scream, well, Bader was a better player. He kind of stunk for us. He lost his job for us. Hell of a second half for the Phillies, but, that's where it ended with that. With that said, let's check in with Frank.
Yes, Ray. This is Frankie. I just wanted to let you know, remember regarding Bellinger, remember P. Alonso last offseason when the Mets said that probably he wasn't going to be signing with them? And then he ended up signing with the Mets with an opt-out, and then he got his contract this offseason. Well, I won't be surprised if Bellinger comes back and sign with the Yankees. Even though I would like for him to sign with the Mets, but I won't be surprised if he comes back and ends up signing with the Yankees. Remember that.
I think it's some good points. Look, remember the reporting was 2 days ago, Dan? The Yankees are pivoting away from Bellinger. They're going to Bichette, and then we had just had Pat on saying I'm not buying any of that. And Frankie kind of makes that point where it's like, I think he wants to be a Yankee. Like, I wasn't sold last year. Juan Soto wanted to be a Yankee. I think Juan Soto wanted the most money whoever was willing to pay him. I don't get that sense with Bellinger. Bellinger likes winning. He likes playing at Yankee Stadium. Clearly, he likes hitting there because away from Yankee Stadium, his OPS is in the low 700s. You know, he has reverse splits. We went over that on your space the other day. Crazy. Belly actually hits lefties way better than he hits righties. He actually doesn't really hit righties at all. But, you know, I think that's kind of a match made in heaven. A lot of people keep saying that. And the Yankees might actually have to overpay a little bit, but I think they're going to get it done.
Yeah, I think Bellinger's a Yankee. It just, again, you heard even today that the Yankees are still negotiating with him. John Heyman broke the news, and everybody's saying, oh, but Buster only. Guys, who do you trust? A national reporter or a local, obviously more skews national, but someone who can get the local scoop? I don't know. That seems pretty easy to me. But I do think Bellinger is going to be a Yankee. They've been so aggressive. And if the Mets aren't bidding in on Bellinger, then who is? Who's upping the market for him? I don't know. And it's probably not the Mets, so I don't think Bellinger goes to the Mets.
I agree. Let's take one more while we're at it.
Let's do it.
Hey, Ray, big Mets fan, big podcast fan here.
Didn't give me your name.
Ask you, if the Mets can't get Kyle Tucker or Framber Valdez, at this point, I think they should honestly just call it an off-season. Don't trade any of their prospect capital. Don't waste any more money. And just go into the 2026 season, see how it goes, and go from there. Obviously, there might be a work stoppage in 2027. I just don't think it's worth dipping into the prospect pool for a Skubal or a Peralta at that point if they can't land another big bat. Curious to hear your take. Love the pod as always. Let's go Mets. Thanks. Bye.
Love the last point. Love the pot. No, I'm just kidding. But Dan, look, a lot of people feel that way. And there's something we brought up early in the offseason. It hasn't been talked about so much, but what if you are what if there is a lockout in 27? Like, that is a realistic possibility where we're doing lives every week and there's nothing to talk about. And we start talking about how terrible the New York Knicks are and how they should probably move to Kansas City.
Well done. Well done.
Like, that's where I'd be at that point. I mean, the Giants suck. No, I'm a Jets fan, but maybe that plays a factor. Maybe a guy like Cody Bellinger is looking at a 6 or 7 year contract, but if there's a holdout in 27, it becomes an 8-year contract. You're willing to give, your max is 6 years or 7 years for Tucker. There's a holdout. All of a sudden, year 2, he's 31 and not 30. Like, that plays into things.
Yeah, it does. The lockout's going to be a big topic. I wish we kind of talked about that with Pat as well. But yeah, everybody kind of knows this is coming. It's just what level of severity we're going to see when it comes to the lockout. How many games are we going to lose if we lose any games at all? That's going to factor into a lot of these decisions, right? I think that's really why you're seeing a lot of these guys want the security of long-term contracts. We see it with Bregman. We see it with Dylan Cease. We could keep going. I mean, there's not many one-year deals being signed, and probably for good reason, because a lot of people see it's just not worth the risk. But we'll see.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you know what? I'm wondering.
The season. We can't be punting on the season to that caller.
Bro, that's my biggest fear. And that's why if I'm Kyle Tucker, there's no way in hell I'm taking a short-term deal. I'm going to opt out into a potential work stoppage where now I don't just gain 1 year on my life, I'm gaining 2. And I had 2 prior injured seasons. For me, his stock's never going to be as high as it is right now. Bregman was a different story. He tested the market. It wasn't out there. He gambled on himself. In my opinion, Bregman and Tucker are 2 way different caliber type players. Tucker is an elite player, top 15 hitter in the game, hits in the clutch, is known for a solid arm. Not that Bregman is not, but for me, it's not a prove-it deal for him. He's not taking a short-term deal. That's what worries me. But that's also when I think, well, the Mets are still in it. And I find it very hard to believe Tucker is supposedly Toronto and LA are involved. When you look at Bregman's offseason last year, how many teams were really gushing to get him? Did he have two power markets out there? You thought the Yankees would be involved considering their third base situation. They don't want to spend money. The Mets weren't involved because they spent their money on Soto and Alonso. There weren't a ton of teams out there. You weren't going to LA. You weren't going to the Giants. You weren't going to Seattle, like the other teams that would be involved. You had Toronto was so worried about retaining Vladimir Guerrero Jr. They spent on Anthony Santander. There wasn't a ton of places to go. You have Bohm with Philly. They were hoping that he was going to work out. He really didn't work out. But that's where I come back to Tucker. There's too big of a market. You have three big market teams involved in him. There's no shot in my mind he's taking a short-term deal. And I don't want to say that rules out the Mets because it doesn't. I feel like the Mets, if they weren't willing to do it, they'd already be out. You wouldn't be hearing these Zoom conversations, them meeting in person, Jim Duquette saying Steve Cohen could potentially be getting involved. And that is something that does hold weight. People don't want to think it does. The reason why Juan Soto's a New York Met is because what he and Alex did last year, as in Steve's wife, they brought everybody. They brought Alex's family, who is Spanish. They were talking. They had dinner. They had a party. They went out to California. They went to Steve's mansion personally. There's no way they do all of that and say, Juan, by the way, year 2 of your prime, yeah, we're going to kind of take a reset button. They're saving a ton of money right now, and I refuse to believe that it's not going to anybody. It's going to someone. And for people to sit here and say, well, it could be Skubal or Peralta, those contracts would affect 27 and beyond, not this season. You still have 60, 70 million to spend now just to get to last year's levels, and I think he's going to go beyond that. Steve Cohen is a guy who, regardless if you want to admit it or not, people, he appreciates the fans. When they do the food drives at Citi Field, the guy who's making $1 billion a day is sitting outside of Citi Field instead of working at his firm. They're doing amazing day. He's at Citi Field making absolutely zero instead of sitting outside, working at his firm. So he does care about it. Remember his first words, I just want to make fans happy. Now, I'll be honest, and I'm probably one of those to admit it the same way. We've all kind of become like demanding a little bit. We demand he spends at this level and gets this player. If this was the Wilpon stand, Vientos, Beatty, that'd be your 3-4 right there. Let's not pretend anything is different here.
Yeah. It's just tricky, right? I don't know. I don't know. Are the Mets going to just call it quits? Like the caller said, like we asked Pat, I mean, they're going to reach the point in the offseason where, hey, this money isn't worth spending. We can just spend it next year. And you could spend it on Freddie Peralta. You don't have to trade for him. He will hit free agency. It's not like Skubal where there's this unknown. You have a lot of teams willing to trade and give him whatever he wants. Peralta, we kind of know this guy is going to be traded at some point. He'll be a free agent. And, it's weird. So we'll see what the market ends up being for a lot of these players. It's going to be interesting. But the Mets have the money. It's just, where do they spend that money? We see them set their sights on Juan Soto. They get Juan Soto. Do they set their sights on Kyle Tucker? Well, odds are in a short-term deal, they can sweeten it up a little bit better than a lot of these other teams can. So just keep that thought in mind, everybody. But this was an awesome live, Ray. Really happy to get
absolutely. A lot of fun, guys. Over 2,000 people in here live between all the platforms. Appreciate you guys. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, and get involved in the conversation. Leave us a voicemail, 631-403-7771. Love hearing from you guys. Love that aspect. It's something that I don't see a lot of other people doing, and I love the personal interaction. It's great to hear the chats, talk with the members. Shout out to John for becoming a member today. Appreciate you, man. It's, we love the personal interaction. And the plan is, during the season especially, our members are going to be able to call in live and have live conversations with us and our guests. But I'm going to run through a couple of your guys' chats in rapid form before we get out of here tonight. We'll start off with Burns. Burns, I'm here for the brotherhood of being a Mets fan. Yeah, I appreciate that. If Ray doesn't start on time, we write our names on a chalkboard and count the attendance, right? Yeah, I was pretty much on time. Not too late, but we had some, pre-production stuff hanging out. Nelson, what's going on? Randy, I have no faith in Stearns. I'll believe it when I see it. A lot of Met fans feel that way. Clue, what's going on? Had one of your voicemails. Hope all is well with you. We got Emore. Mets will get it done. Don't worry. Meet the New York Mets. It's going to be our year. Bring up the New York Mets minor leaguers. We will have a lot to do with it. Got to believe. I hope there's a lot of people out there that feel like that. I try to be positive during the season. Don't get me wrong. I will let people have it when they need to. Explosive says Bichette will be Murphy 2.0. Blue Jays fans are very scared right now. Could be Vicus. Hopefully I said that right. Youth movement is right. However, no Donovan. Get Tucker, who is on impact. And I'll tell you this, Tucker's young. You know, he's young. He'd be a part of that youth movement. I mean, he's probably still got, 5 years left in his prime? Mets fanatic. We read that earlier. Appreciate you chiming in, man. Klub again, how much of a leash will they give Mendoza? They could cut him more slack since the expectations shouldn't be high. The expectations should be high every year. It's one thing Steve Cohen talked about. I don't think they give him a ton of slack. If they're stinking really early, he's the easy scapegoat, Dan.
Fernando or Carlos? No, I do think that Carlos Mendoza will. I don't think the leash is as short as we think, ladies and gentlemen. I think the Mets are really going to have to be bad out of the gate for Carlos Mendoza to be fired to the liking of 5-25 in their first 30 games. That level of bad. I think if they're middle of the pack team by the trade deadline, you obviously trust Cohen and Stearns to go and add at the deadline like they did in 2015. Hopefully they do. But that's kind of where I'm at. It would have to be really, really bad for Carlos Mendoza to be fired.
All right, guys, that's all we got for you guys tonight. Smash that like button. And just a reminder, next Monday night, 8:30, we got a guest booked for you guys. You're not going to want to miss this because there was a lot of controversy this offseason surrounding this one reporter. You're not going to want to miss it. Thanks so much for sticking around. As always, let's go
Mets, everybody.